guys, what's up? Welcome back to Weekly Academics and you're listening to Faiza Inamdar. And this is the third part of our third chapter and we're discussing the early nationalists. So as I said, in this one we'll be discussing in particular the contributions of Dadabhai Naoroji. So Dadabhai Naoroji, as we all know, has been a very important role player and an important contributor. In the earlier chapter also we've seen his contribution as in the foundation of East India Association, which was a precursor of the Indian National Congress. So yes, that will also be referred to over here. So without taking much time, let's just dive into it because this is a very direct part and quite easy to understand actually. So let's move into the contributions of Dadabhai Naoroji. So first and the most important thing is that Dadabhai Naoroji was known as the Great Old Man of India. He's known as the Great Old Man of India. He's just known by that name. And he was born on 4th September in 1825 in a Parsi family in Mumbai. And he was a professor of mathematics in Elphinstone College, Bombay. So that's a bit of background to understand who Dadabhai Naoroji was. Now let's look into his contributions. Now, the first one is that he was an unofficial ambassador of India in England. So how is that possible? So basically, as we know, in 1866, Dadabhai Naoroji founded the East India Association in London. Okay, so that was actually the doorway to being the unofficial ambassador to England. So through the East India Association, he wanted to inform the British about the grievances and the genuine problems of the Indians and the true state of India, right? So when he stayed in England, when he stayed in London, he made a lot of friends over there. And with their help, he won a seat to the British House of Commons, which is equivalent to the Lok Sabha in India. So like we have Lok Sabha in India, they have the British House of Commons. So he got a seat in the House of Commons in 1892. And because of that, he became a member of the British Parliament and he could place the genuine problems of Indians directly in front of the entire Parliament. And through his seat in the Parliament, he also worked for the cause of India and the people of Indian origin in South Africa. Because he got a seat in the House of Commons, he used it very wisely and he worked for the Indians and the people of Indian origin in South Africa. Now, because of the efforts of Dadabhai Naoroji and a friend that he made over there in England, Brad Luft, the British House of Commons even agreed to some of the grievances. And as we'd seen in the objectives of the early nationalists, one of it was to conduct simultaneous examinations of Indian civil service in England and in India. And Dadabhai Naoroji was successful in convincing the Parliament to pass a resolution regarding that. But unfortunately, the resolution did not turn into an act, but it was kind of one for a victory for Dadabhai Naoroji because the British Parliament actually tried to look into at least the problems of India. So that's how he was the unofficial ambassador of India in England. Now moving on to his second contribution. His second contribution is towards the Indian National Congress. So he was one of the founder members of Indian National Congress, and that is why we even studied him while we were studying the precursors of Indian National Congress. So Dadabhai Naoroji was an important member in the INC. He presided over 3 meetings of the INC. The 1886 meeting, that's the second meeting, 1893 and 1906. And the meeting of 1906 was very important because in 1906 they were discussing issues that were created because of the partition of Bengal that happened in 1905. And in that period of time, the assertives were also the assertive nationalists, that is the second group of nationalists that we'll be studying in the next chapter, also were in dominance. So it was because of Dadabhai Naoroji's fame and because of his reputation that the early nationalists could pose his candidature for being the president or being the person who presides over the meeting of 1906. And it was a very iconic session. His contribution in the Calcutta session was very important. And that is what brings us to the third contribution. That is his address to the Calcutta session of Congress in 1906. So in 1906, the Congress laid stress, especially Dadabhai Naoroji in his address, he laid stress on the attainment of Swaraj. He said that he urged that they wanted justice now. And in the session of 1906, they passed a resolution for Swaraj, Swadeshi, boycott and national education. They passed a resolution of 4 important things: Swaraj, Swadeshi, boycott and national education. And that happened under the presidency of Dadabhai Naoroji. And he laid stress on the attainment of Swaraj and the urge for justice for the citizens of India. So that was the third contribution, that is the Calcutta session of 1906. Moving on to the fourth one is, the most important one is this fourth one, because that is his interpretation of the Indian economy and the cause of poverty, the nature of British imperialism. That is the famous drain theory and views of Dadabhai Naoroji on Indian economy. You can also put this under the title of contributions via literature, because this also includes that. So as we know, Dadabhai Naoroji edited Rast Goftar. Okay, that was one. Second was, he started a magazine known as Dharma Marg Darshak. Okay, he started a magazine known as Dharma Marg Darshak, and through Rast Goftar, through Dharma Marg Darshak, he guided the general public. He attempted to inform the general public of the political changes, political decisions being taken at the higher level. Okay, and we've seen the contribution of press and literature in the rise of nationalism chapter. So we understand the importance of this contribution. Another was his view on Indian economy and how India was being exploited by the British, and he writes about this in his book known as Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. That was one of his book that he's written, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Also a very iconic and worth reading book. Another of his famous contribution is the drain theory. So what basically the drain theory is, it is a theory which explains how India's wealth is being taken away to England. And Dadabhai Naoroji explains the forms in which Indian wealth is being taken away to England. Number 1 being the salaries that are paid to the members of the Indian Council. Number 2 being the dispatch of savings to England by the British personals who are posted in India. So whatever they earn, whatever they save, they send it back to England. So money drained. Third is the pensions given to the British officers. Fourth is the payment for the War Office and the maintenance of British troops, the expenditure on military. Fifth is the profit of the British agencies, British trading agencies in India. So the 5 ways in which Indian wealth was being drained was: number 1, the salaries; second, the dispatch of savings; third, pensions; fourth, payments for the War Office and maintenance of British troops; fifth, the profit of British trading agencies. So he tried to explain this to the general public, that that's how India's wealth is being drained. Okay, and he also played a very important role, which is our fifth point, his advocacy for a just political system. So he laid out his views on this, not very important a point, just to understand. He laid out his views and he says that justice is the real basis of political power and not brutal force. That was his views on just political systems. Okay. So that's Dadabhai Naoroji's contribution. Number 1, he was the unofficial ambassador of India to England. Number 2, he was one of the founder members of INC. Third, his address to the Calcutta session of INC in 1906. Fourth is his literary contributions, which include Ras Goftar, Dharma Marg Darshak, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, Drain Theory, these 4 things. And fifth is his views in general about just political systems, about economics, etc. And because of all these contributions, Dadabhai Naoroji came to be known as the pathfinder of Indian nationalism. So I guess being called the great old man of India or the pathfinder of Indian nationalism explains how important his contributions were. And that's it. That's the amount of contributions that we need to know that Dadabhai Naoroji did. Very easy to remember, easy to understand. And yes, that's it for this podcast. I'll come up with the next podcast, and that will be on the contributions of Surendranath Banerjee. Until then, if you want to listen to something soothing, quiet, peaceful, beautiful, relaxing, you can listen to Your Life in My Voice podcast by Dr. Faiza Inamdar, which are all available on YouTube. And Yes, all my podcasts are also available on YouTube. So do like the podcast, share it with your friends, and subscribe the YouTube channel for continuous updates and to have a look into all the podcasts. And you can also put all your feedbacks, comments, or any doubts if you have in the comment section, or DM me at weekly.academics. That's the Instagram handle. If you want me to make some content, some podcasts on specific chapters, you can also feel free to tell me about it. I will try my best to do that also. And until then, you're listening to Faiza Inamdar at Weekly Academics. I'll get back to you soon with the contributions of Surendranath Banerjee. Be safe, be home, take care, be healthy. Bye-bye.